Welcome to NICTITATIng Presents, an author series. I'm Sean M. Thompson, and my guest today is Brooke Warra. How you doing?
Good, good. Glad to be here.
Yes, I'm glad you're here too. It's been a lot of finagling. I got woken up by a cat fight this morning too early and then overslept. Many things have come up, but we've managed to get this going, so I'm glad. So let's see. In the last year, you had Luminous Body, which came out from Dim Shores, and you had a story in Horror for Races. But you actually won an award for your, is it a novella?
I think they call it a novelette.
But you did win a Shirley Jackson, right?
I did. It was really shocking.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I've never won an award. So how did, well, I guess, how did that make you feel? Considering you probably didn't expect you were going to win anything.
I totally didn't. My roommate and my husband and I were all sitting around the laptop watching the ceremony online, because obviously everything's online these days. And the category for novelette came up and they introduced everybody, and I fully was not expecting my name to be called. And when it was, I had the weirdest reaction. I jumped up and I ran out of the room.
Okay.
And my husband and my roommate are just like yelling, like, you won. And I'm like, no, I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I don't know what I do. I mean,
It was just really, it was a really big surprise. I was so excited to have even been nominated. And I really, I genuinely mean that. If I'm ever recommended for anything, I just think that that's so neat. Somebody's out there reading words I wrote. But the win was just like, it's still every once in a while, like it was like 2 weeks after the ceremony, and we're laying in bed, and I turn to my husband and I'm like, I just realized I won a Shirley Jackson. It just is still surprising.
I know. That's like, yeah, that's crazy, man. And also, like, just the fact that I mean, how long have you really been writing for publication?
Let's see, I had my first two stories published in December of 2014.
Okay, so that was about what I was thinking. So like you've been at this about the same length as me in terms of like what I consider like being actually published, more or less. You have 6 years. I think I'm working on
Right.
about 6 years.
Yeah, I think at first I just wanted to see what was going to happen if I started if I actually started submitting to markets. And then it was probably around 2017 when I first was published by Dim Shores that, I got, I don't know, quote unquote serious about it.
Well, yeah, because I feel like there's always the one publication, I guess for most people, where you're like, oh, okay, like I've sort of leveled up.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely one of those moments where, I had friends in the writing community that were like, listen, from here on out, you don't work for free.
No,
Like,
no.
you need to, only work with people that are going to pay you for what you're doing. And so that was definitely a turning point. It was like a stepping stone for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a trip. I mean, it's weird because I started in I say about 2010 or 2011, just in terms of like trying to get published. And I did a lot of contributor copy stuff, stuff for free.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until whenever I had my Vastarian story, that was like one of the big, like, okay, this is bigger.
Yeah, no, totally. We were in that same issue together, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's always like really exciting to me because there is just kind of a group of us that all started getting published around the same time and really working at this. And then when we end up in the same, like being in Bostonian, it was just like, oh, well, here we go.
Yeah, no, it's interesting too, because I don't know if you're like me, but like, sometimes like other writers would tell me like, oh, you're doing pretty good in your career. And I'll be like, no, I'm not. Shut up. And they're like, I mean, you've been in these bigger things and you just got in this thing. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm still not this person over here. And they're like, right, but you're doing pretty good.
Right. Yeah. I tend to have the same sort of like people have to remind me like, hey, you've done some big stuff. But it's just I think there's sort of you're juggling like all these feelings, right? Because there's that like absolute exuberation and excitement of having been published and paid for your work and being acknowledged for it. And then there's this the imposter syndrome
Oh yeah.
that is constantly telling you like, well, yeah, but that's not that big of a deal. Like it's just it's so frustrating. You want to definitely like celebrate any successes that you have.
No, you do, but there's hold on a second. Let me let my stupid cat in. Come on,
Okay.
cat. Come on, and you're just gonna leave immediately. I always say I'm gonna edit this part out, and I never do. It's fine. Yeah, no, it's just like I think to an extent that's healthy to at least have some sort of voice in your head that's trying to keep you humble.
Yeah.
But it can be an issue when it becomes sort of self-sacrificing in a way. Like I don't know where I'm trying to go with this. I guess I'm saying like a little bit can go a long way with that stuff. But I know that a lot of writers struggle with like a lot of stuff. But I think imposter syndrome is one of the bigger ones. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really for me it gets so bad at times like I won't even open a new document. Like I won't work on things because there is that voice like telling me that I'm like I'm a fraud, and if people even paid attention to what I was writing, like they would know that I wasn't good at it. So it'll keep me from just doing the work, which in and of itself, like, and I honestly mean this, is like the most joyous thing for me in life, like whether or not it's going to be published or anybody's even going to see it, like the act of writing is very joyful for me. And so that is what it robs me of. But what's the cure for that, I think, is like I'll read my peers' work, like what my friends are doing, and I just get so excited by that and everything they're working on and how talented everyone is, and that will kind of kick me into gear to start working on my own stuff.
No, I feel you. I mean, that's sort of the reason I started press and started doing these interviews and stuff again, is just people like around my level just reading like what they're doing. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that, like I'll get a little jealous, like, oh, that's so good, I wish I wrote that. But it does give me a little kick in the ass to be like, all right, well, I gotta actually do something now.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. It's the one thing I know. Like I have a stack of books next to my bed, and a lot of times there's at least 2 or 3 that include the work of friends, because it's just I know this is super cheesy, but it's like really inspiring.
No, I mean it is. Like I know we're supposed to be aloof and like, oh, I am a award-winning artist. I don't care. I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
I feel like a lot of that is like for show anyway. Like I know on my end, I feel a lot of emotions when it comes to writing. Like not always good, by the way,
Right.
but a lot of the time with the bad will come like very positive, like just being very excited about it. I mean, you got to have something to be excited about, because let's face it, none of us is like making all that much money at this.
Right. So you have to be motivated by something other than the money you're not making.
Right, exactly. I think what I found is I lowered my bar, and now I'm like, wow, I made $100.
Yeah.
But no, but seriously, it's always a grass is greener thing too, because like, I don't know, even in like 2015, if I had made $100 in a story, it would have been like, holy shit, that's amazing. And now I'm like, only $100. Like,
it is kind of funny because I feel like there's somewhat of a trade-off. I know it's more like work now.
oh yeah, no, it's definitely.
And that can be such a bummer, because I think growing up, I always thought, well, if I could just be paid to write, like that would be the life.
And then you find out it's a
And
job
then,
like anything else, and you're like, God damn it.
yes, it is.
Like, what do you mean not every day is going to be amazing?
Right. I was talking about having a deadline recently, and another writer was like, said something about, not having experienced that yet. And I was like, don't, it's stupid.
I mean, I'm trying to think if I've had a set. I mean, yeah, I've had deadlines, but I haven't had like a serious deadline yet. And admittedly, when you start your own press, it's this really psycho thing of like, you're setting your own deadlines if you're writing your own work that you're putting out. So it's like, I really am my own boss. And that one's a weird one where you're like, you're sort of fighting with yourself. You're like, get it done. And the other part of you is like, it's fine, dude. You got time.
Yeah, well, most of my writing.
But I guess every writer is sort of their own boss to an extent.
Yeah, no, totally. And there's like, a lot of the times if I'm asked to participate in a project, it's like a year out. So it's like, it's really just me that puts that up on a shelf and waits until the week before. And like, I don't even have an idea of what I'm going to do. Like, I knew about the luminous body that I was going to write this for like almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Before I started it. Yeah. I had been asked right before, like, they had closed down for a little while. And then when they came back, Sam Cowan was like, hey, like, I still really am interested in having you do the chapbook. And so I went ahead and knocked it out. But yeah, it's really just self-imposed frustration, because you are given usually a good amount of time. And if there is a deadline, it's usually like, because I know a certain publication is going to close their submission window at a certain time. So again, that's just self-imposed stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is. And, yeah, there are days I'm not great at it either. Like, I don't know. It's weird though, because it's like, I don't know. I always have in my head, like, this is how other writers do it. And it's like, you never really know.
I have to constantly not compare myself to what other people are doing, because I feel like I'm really slow in between projects. I don't produce a whole lot, which is something that constantly just aggravates me.
Well, I had I forget who I was talking with, but like, I had an interesting back and forth where it was someone who also was slower and didn't have as much output, but they had a lot of, like, it seemed like they had a lot of buzz and people really liked their work. And I was talking about how I'm like the other way, where it's like, I have a little buzz, but it's like, I can do a lot of work and produce, but then it's like, it's almost like the more work I put out and faster, it's like I almost get there's almost a little bit of like, oh, he's still doing stuff. So it's like, you're there. So people get used to it. And it's almost like when you have less output, people are like sort of waiting on it. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah,
But I was telling them, I'm like, oh, yeah, it is a grass is greener thing. Because I'm like, God, I wish I had more buzz, even if I didn't have as much work out. But then obviously from your end, you're like, I wish I had more work out.
Yeah, I do. We started a business a couple of years ago. So I will sometimes get lost for months, wrapped up in that. And then something will be going on in the writing community, like some convention or a release or something. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm also a writer, and I should focus on that sometimes, because it's like the most important thing to me. But when you're running a small business outside of that it just demands a lot of your time, and it's a lot of math, and time gets away from me there.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's sort of the dread I have having started the press, is like, I have to put on an editor hat, and that actually requires time. So it's like, oh, wait, no, I gotta juggle this with... And sometimes I will notice, I'll go, when I get into editor mode on something, it's like I won't be writing, because I'll be like, oh, like, I should do more of these edits. So it's like a back and forth and trying to balance multiple things, which is similar to an extent.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty well known too that creative people are not typically great at time management.
No, I mean, I'm pretty good at it, but that's just because, like, from the age of 12 on, I know I've had ADHD, and like I've like fought and like worked really, really hard to learn how to get better at time management.
Yeah, I did not get my diagnosis until I was 34.
Yeah, see, I think it's a little different when you get into being diagnosed as an adult, because you've gone so long and you've gotten used to how you are, sort of.
Right.
But there's always a give and take with that. Like, I started taking Adderall at 12. which I don't know if that's still a thing, but I hope it's not, because
I don't know. I have not been treated for mine yet.
well, I just think the issue is like people mean well, but right now all they have, and honestly, it's like this in a lot of things with medical things. Right now they just throw pills at you,
Right.
which is not a great, especially if you're a former addict. That's not a solution.
Yeah, no, that's actually a big reason why I haven't gone to get any kind of like medicine, like medicinal treatment for it. I at the time of my diagnosis, like I had gotten sober and I was also having like my whole entire thyroid removed, and I thought, well, maybe once this is all over with having that removed, like maybe some of my symptoms would balance out, and they have not. But I'm trying, like I do the bullet journal system, and I try really hard to like hold myself accountable for what I get done in a day, and doing things at a reasonable hour seems to be my biggest issue. Like it's always like 11 p.m. and I'm like,
Oh, I hear that, man.
oh, I should have made labels today. And so then I'll do it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's an ADHD thing, but I felt like yesterday I was good. I'm co-writing a story with Brian O'Connell for that Matthew M. Bartlett tribute.
Oh yeah.
Plugged him me. I'm super psyched about that though. I honestly didn't think I was getting in.
It's crazy that it's even happening. Like it's really neat because Matthew's great.
He is. He's been one of the big champions of my work, and it was great to read him because he operates on sort of a similar transgressive level. So it's sort of like it helps me sometimes when I'm like, oh, this is super over the top, but then I'll read a Bartlett story and be like, oh, okay, all right, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But what was I gonna? Oh yeah, but so I wrote 1,000 words with Brian O'Connell yesterday, but then at like midnight, I was like, oh, I should try to make this apple jelly that I'm trying to learn how to do. Right. Which I don't know that everybody at midnight is like, this is when I try the new thing that's going to take me hours.
It is like, I think it is an ADHD thing because there's like something about like.
Well, it is that immediacy. You're like, I have to do everything now. So.
Well, and the melatonin production like isn't done right. And so I know I had to train myself to not make soap at 2 a.m.
Okay, so it is, I feel a little better. And then I still don't know whether it's jelly or syrup because, jelly is a whole different, it's like you're dealing with like setting of it, and you use, I don't know why I'm even going into this, but I'd never used pectin, which is like a gelatin type of thing.
Right.
So I did this time, and then it's like, I didn't know, because, when it's done, it's not like, it doesn't just turn into jelly. Like when it's done, it's still sort of liquidy. So if you've never used it before, you're not really sure. You're like, did that work? Did it not? Because it can take like 24 hours sometimes for it to totally set.
Right.
And then I also was like, this should be when I learned canning, because I bought canning equipment. So at like 2 a.m, it was like, cool, this is a good idea. Boiling a huge thing of hot water and like taking, like this big can of like either apple syrup or apple jelly and then canning it, which I've never done in my entire life. And it was like, yes, 2 a.m. is the right time for this.
Yes, I know, exactly. I'm like doing that same thing with like caustic lye. And, just all these chemical reactions going on. And a lot of times it's because I'm trying something new and I just don't know who does that at that time of day when you're like, your brain needs to be sleeping.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, my whole, my collection Screaming Creatures, like, and I don't want to blame my partner, but, with all this COVID stuff, it's like, she's just around all the time. And that's not her fault, but she's also the one that has like a real job that makes us money.
Right.
So I'm sort of naturally like, yes, you make us money. I don't care.
Yes.
But, it's harder for me to focus because I got used to having an empty house and I've been working from home. So now it's like there's constantly someone there.
Yes.
And so naturally I sort of gravitated to, well, I'll do a little bit while she's asleep. And then very, very quickly that became, I'm up from midnight until 5 for like a month and a half, 2 months
Right.
working on the edits for the book, and then just everything else. It's been like, cool, just do it at 3 in the morning.
Yes, that's exactly the same thing that has happened in my life. Over the course of many years, like I was raising children by myself. And so that was the time to be creative was, at midnight they're asleep. I've had a couple of hours to decompress. And so I'm at a write now. Well, now that's how my brain always thinks of writing. Like it's got to happen in the middle of the night. It can never happen any other time of day. And then with COVID, it's like everybody's home all day and I kind of have to, like, or you mentioned like putting on different hats. It's like, I got to be mom during certain hours and a wife and a roommate and a good friend. And then it's, I find that I feel like the time until the middle of the night, which is honestly ridiculous because I'm fully capable of saying to people, especially, like my kid is 13. He's not 3. It's really not necessary for me to like sit around all day and not write because I'm being a mom right now. Like that's silly. He fully understands if I'm working on a thing, he knows like if the house is burning down, let me know. But other than that,
Right. Yeah, I don't know. All that stuff is so hard. It's just, I have a hard time with firsts too. And it's like, I've never had to, like, none of us have had to deal with like a pandemic.
yeah,
So just like wrapping your head around that and learning how to still, I mean, even just do a job while that's going on is hard because it's like sometimes at the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, like my aunt died from this. And like, I know a friend who passed away who already had some sort of liver issue, but and then it's like all of that shit on top of the regular self-doubty shit.
right. Yeah, it is. There's still a literal pandemic going on. And yeah, we've had some people, close to, my family that have been sick with it. We haven't lost anyone yet, but it's just constantly there, the threat of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, like, there's a lot of complicated. Then I feel guilty because sometimes people are like, wow, like, you seem like you're doing pretty good during this. And I'm like, I mean, I guess relatively, yes. But then I feel guilty for, like, still being able to write and do things. So it's like, yeah, it's a lot of complicated stuff.
Yeah, there was sort of this, almost like exuberance in the beginning. I think people felt like we have time to work on creative projects now. And then it's just the reality of the situation, I think, made that near impossible for a lot of people, myself included. It wasn't until the last couple of weeks that I've actually been able to write anything.
Yeah, I mean, I've been able to write, but like, I don't know. It's almost like I feel like I have an unfair advantage because like I've been doing like online surveys for money. Like I haven't had a job for like a year because we also did a big move. We moved like from Massachusetts to New Mexico. So that's, I mean, I'm hard on myself, but that is sort of a normal thing to have trouble finding a job.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, it's like I did get used to working from home. So when everyone else had to start working from home, I was sort of gearing up like, oh no, guys, because I went through this and like there are stages. It's like grief. There are stages. The initial stage is you're just so happy.
Yes.
You still have a job and you're like, yeah, I can wear my pajamas and do all the shit and be at home, And then very quickly you realize like, oh no, my home has to become my office. And that is so hard.
Yes.
Because you sit on your couch, it's the same couch you sit on to watch TV or play video games or read a book.
Right.
And suddenly that couch has to become your office chair.
Yes.
Or, you pick a different room. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like you have to learn how to, yeah, again, putting on different hats. You have to learn how to be like, this is work me. And work me sits on the same couch, but does work.
Right. Yeah, I definitely, I think I struggle with that every day. Every day. I've been out of a day job for a couple of years now. I had both my feet rebuilt because I was working caregiving, which is very labor intensive.
I've done it. Yeah, it's super labor intensive.
Yeah, and my feet, which weren't great anyway, I was born with really severe club feet. Well, they just collapsed, like they literally collapsed. And so I had them rebuilt, and the doctor was like, if you go back to that, we did all of this for nothing. Like they're great, like they're metal ends holding my feet together. It actually looks really cool on the x-ray, but they're not indestructible. So, so I had to come up with like, so we started making soap and doing the soap business because I can make my own schedule, which apparently is at 2 a.m, and focusing on writing, when I'm not, arguing with my imposter syndrome about that. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Need to pat ourselves on the back at least for having some form of income that we managed to
Totally
procure. Yeah, man, like as much as it's really difficult to make any money doing online surveys, I've somehow managed for like a year.
Yeah, those are not easy to like.
No, I do Amazon Turk, but even then it's like it's usually on a good day $3 an hour. So it's hard too, because it's like sometimes you're just really not in the mood to be like, if Oreo brand was a person, like what would they wear? And you're like, God, I don't give a shit. Just give me my dollar.
Oh my God. Yeah, I would like that too.
But but at the same time, I'm just thankful to have some means of income because a lot of people don't even have that right now.
Yeah, it's been really hard on everybody.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It is what it is. Can you talk about what you're working on, or is that sort of supposed to be kept under wraps?
Yeah, I actually can't. I actually cannot talk about it. I do get to say that, I was invited to, Endless from Nightscape Press is putting out an anthology, and it's like a science fiction, weird fiction slipstream sort of thing, and that's going to be, coming out, I think, sometime next year. So I have a year to work on that. So we all know what that means. But I'm so excited to be invited to that.
No, I hear you, man. It's exciting when you get invited to stuff. Like I'm still not used to it.
Right. Yeah. Every time it happens, I'm like, what, who, me? Like that really, goofy.
I mean, I'm used to it, but I've also had negative experiences where I literally got invited to something, did 8 edits, and then the day of the TOC announcement was rejected.
Oh no.
So that was like, really?
Okay, let me tell you a story. It's short. So I got invited to the thing a couple of years ago, and I was so super excited about it. Like, it's a really cool press. They're super nice people. I felt very honored to have been asked to send them something. And the day before their submission period closed, I was reading through the guidelines again, and specifically for formatting. I had stayed up for 36 hours and just knocked the story out.
Yeah.
And I get to the guidelines, like a portion I had apparently not read before, where it specifically says like a certain type of trope they didn't want.
Uh-oh.
And it was literally the story that I wrote. Like, it was exactly.
Oh, that sucks.
So I never did, I decided not to even send it in, because I just felt like that was just kind of, it would have been not very respectful of their very clear boundaries. And so I did not, and it was like really, it was so sad.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. I'm not going to say what press, but somebody sort of asked me to do like a spec novella, and I did it, and then it was like they read it and they had the edits, and I'm not a turd. Like, obviously I'll go off of edits, but it was like a 1-2 punch of, I don't know, like I wasn't really feeling the edits too much, but that happens. Like, you're just supposed to deal with that. But then they pushed the book back also, and it was like I had all this other stuff going on, so I had to like pass. But it happens, like I wrote a whole 20,000 word thing, and I was like, yeah, I can't do this.
Yeah, it's like you said, like I think most of the time we get used to just kind of rolling with it, whatever the editor says, and most of the time it's because they're making the story better. But there have been times where I've had to just decide to keep my peace, because if sometimes it changes it in such a fundamental way. And I think we writers are in danger of feeling that about every word, and I definitely want to be open
Right.
to collaborating with editors and feedback and all that stuff. And I think that's great. And even a lot of times when it's painful, you end up with something that's even better than you thought it could be. But there are those moments where it's like, this is no longer my work. And, or it changes it in such a way that it's,
Oh, I mean, I definitely felt like that because it wasn't even my work. It was like, I'd never done spec either.
yeah,
Like, this was literally the dude was like, here's the story. This is the outline. You got to go off of this. And I managed to do it, but I was like, okay, here's my one thing. And then, of course, the edits come back. And my one thing that, like, kept me going, they're like, we want you to cut that. And it was like, well, that was like I felt like that was the only thing that made my story my own.
right.
Because it was like, otherwise, just you write it.
It's really hard.
But yeah, no, that is a thing. I mean, like, especially when you work your way up. Like, I know when you get to, like, if someone gets into Big Five, for instance, it's like there are usually major changes they make you do.
Yeah.
And you got to either be okay with it or, you know, figure out, like, okay, like, where you're going to stand your ground. And then it's like, should you even bother? Like, should you just compromise on the first couple till you get your name out there? So there's a lot of stuff you got to juggle with the writing career.
Yeah, and it's really difficult to work with somebody else's like idea.
No, it is.
It's
I mean,
it's so I don't know, because then it's like you're spending a lot of that time trying to sort of inject yourself into like find your voice and your rhythm, but it's like it's someone else's idea, and it's so difficult. I've had to do it a few times, and it's just that's hard work. That's really hard work.
no, it is. I mean, I've experimented with adaptations, for instance. I did a comic book adaptation for someone. Like, granted, not expecting they're not going to see the light of day. This is just for me to get the practice in. But I did like a one-shot comic adaptation of a bigger writer that I knew. And then I did write a pilot for a certain longer work from a friend of mine, television pilot, and I was trying to do like a series of it. But yeah, like that is similar where it's someone else's work and you're trying to make it your own, but then at the same time you're like, you can't make it too much your own because it's supposed to be an adaptation. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff I've dealt with in terms of just experimenting with adapting other people's work into different forms.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that stuff is kind of tricky. Admittedly, it hasn't even been an issue because it's like none of the stuff I'm writing is going to get optioned. Realistically, it'll be 10 years before I even can think about writing something that would ever be made into a show or a film or a comic book or whatever. So
I think you never know. You never know.
I mean, you never know though. Like,
we've seen a
that
few.
is one great thing about all the streaming services is I feel like if I write even a halfway decent thing that is slightly larger in scale or visibility than what I'm working with now, there's a chance.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a few people from, our little community taken off, and there's been some movies and stuff, and that's...
Yeah, dude, I mean, like, one of the weirdest things to me, speaking of imposter syndrome, was like, I didn't expect to get into that Bartlett book. I will be man enough to admit I was a bit peeved when I, like, first saw it and they didn't invite me, but I was like, I learned... I'm pretty good. Within a couple of days, I was like, all right, this just is what it is. I lined up with someone else working on another thing. And like, cool, whatever. Like, I'm over it. So I'd learned, like, all right, fine. And then, like, 2 days later, I got invited. And I was like, oh, God damn it. Like, but, yeah, just the fact that I'm going to be in a book with Nathan Ballingrud, who, like...
Right.
I feel like is, like, an indie darling because he wasn't really writing anything... Like, he has more visibility, obviously, but he hasn't been writing anything, like, so enormous that it's that much bigger than you or I could hope to achieve.
No, absolutely. That kind of stuff really, that reminds me, like, that it could be any one of us at any time. And it's so cool to see it when it happens. Like, it's just...
I mean, my big thing, which I don't expect to happen, but it might... And it wouldn't for a couple of years anyway, but like, I mean, I'm pretty realistic. Like, my only goal with this press is like a platform for my own work and then to put out some books that I think are pretty cool, like that I think maybe just aren't around.
Well, isn't that like, okay, because I feel like this is so this is like a constant conversation going on, right? Like with other writers, the frustration of like, oh, I have so many pieces out, but like I don't see myself being like maybe a best-selling author or worldwide famous anytime soon or in the next 5 or 10 years. And it's like,
Right.
and people get really bummed about that. And I absolutely understand that feeling because we work really hard at what we do. I know that like writing can be fun, but I'm also digging into some stuff that's like really painful in order to get stories out.
Oh, that is the other thing though. Yeah, like it's like some of my like I have a story in Screaming Creatures called Cycle, which is literally about the cycle of abuse, and there's nothing supernatural about it. It's literally just this little girl that's been abused by her mom who ends up getting addicted to drugs, and then at the end it's her abusing her kid and being like, what have I become?
Because it's like that's the real life horror, right?
Yeah, but like if someone was like, oh my god, loved your collection, but we're going to adapt this into a movie or something, I'd be like, oh, really? And then it's like, then I have to deal with like reminding my mom, like, it's not you. Like,
oh God. Yeah, that's a whole other, my mom seems to think that every mother in every story I've ever written is her. And I have to remind her, I'm like, I'm a mom too. And sometimes I'm writing about myself. Like, it's my own shame or guilt or whatever, remorse for the mistakes I made. But like, so what I was thinking though is like, I think early on when I started sending work in for publication, I really had to decide that like that was going to be enough. Like I don't really have these.
No, because I have talked to people recently too, where they're relatively new and they're like, oh yeah, like I'm excited to make all this money or these sales, and I'm trying to like very delicately be like, that might not happen, but you just got to keep going.
It's like I think it's just rewarding to
you basically have to be okay with, because I've had this happen. You have to be okay with working on a project and releasing it to basically no fanfare and just being excited that you did the work and just think, well, maybe someday like it'll gain an audience.
Yes, and I do think that like I have found that there are we all support each other, and like I buy my friends' books and I read them and I get excited about them and I share my opinions and I feel like that we're all sort of doing that for each other, and there's like a rare occasion maybe where somebody has read it and you don't know how they got a hold of your work, but it's like, I just think that that's enough. I don't think that other people need to feel that way, but that's, for me, it's like, this is enough. Obviously we always want to be striving for and like open to newer, bigger things, but I just think that I would probably be really sad if I wasn't just, happy for being able to do it.
No, I'll admit, when I started, like when I was working on my first book that I'd never decided to publish because it's, in my opinion, garbage. You're writing, like, I was writing it like, I'm going to drop this and this is going to make me a millionaire, which is like so stupid. And even then I knew that wasn't realistic, but it's like sort of what you sometimes have to do mind games just to get yourself going.
Right.
And then very quick, like now my thing is like, oh my God, if I sell more than 100 copies of this book, I'm going to lose my mind.
Right. Yeah. No, totally.
And to some people, they'd be like, well, that's bad. And I'm just like, no, because, you have to find something to get excited about, but then at the same time, you have to be realistic. And it's like, just realistically, I've put out 4 books. On to the 5th. None of them have sold like a ton. They've gotten traction enough. They've gotten reviews enough. But none of them have been like my book that's like exploded.
Yeah, I especially like.
But I'm sort of okay with it now.
I'm mostly a short story writer, so yeah, it's definitely there is no fanfare.
You know what's weird though? Yeah, I used to think short stories are not going to get me anywhere, and I still do them because I love them. But I'm like, they'll get me to a certain place, but not that far. And then I had Blind Opera come out in Vestarian, and it's like almost I read like 4 or 5 reviews on Amazon that specifically named the story.
Yeah.
Then I got like a little Datlow honorable mention in one of her best year's best horror or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was pretty crazy because it's like sometimes you go into it like this will get me nowhere. I felt like that about my new Bizarro author series book, Hate from the Sky. I was like, cool, I'm just doing this, to get a little bit of money and to have like a little bit more name recognition.
Yeah.
And to try something new. And it was like that book did, when I say really well, I don't mean in terms of sales, but I do mean like it got a little bit of traction,
Yeah.
And it was really weird to me because I really went into it like this is going to get me nowhere. And then sometimes I'll write something that I'm like, this is like really important to me. And I feel like this should be big, and then it doesn't go anywhere. So just balancing expectations too.
Yeah, that's sort of how I felt with Luminous Thought, just the style of it and stuff. I really wasn't sure that I was gonna be able to like connect with the readers because it was so personal to me. But it's been like really surprising, like how many people like found themselves in it, and that is sort of worth all of it. But I know that I am working on a novel for the first time ever right now, like an actual like long piece. And I think part of that I never did, like I've been wanting to write and writing like my whole life, but I was terrified of starting a novel because I had this idea that you had to, write this perfect masterpiece.
Oh, no. It's like I found talking with most people, it's like sometimes your first novel you don't even use because you're like this, it's like learning the form, right. But it's so long and it takes so much time that it's very hard to wrap your head around the fact that like I might work for a year on something and be informed by it and learn a lot from it in terms of novel structure and what I'm good at, what I'm bad at, but it might not go anywhere.
Yeah, and that's absolutely how I feel about this one because it's definitely not anything that anybody had asked me for. I sat down to write, my husband and I were like, we haven't written in a while, like let's just sit side by side in our laptops and see what we can come up with in 15 minutes. And 15 minutes in, I was like, holy shit, this is I think a novel. And so I'm really just doing it, to see if I can do it.
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with having your novel you do just to learn that you can do a novel.
Yeah.
It's hard, man. Like I have one published novel right now, but to get to that one published novel, I had to spend 2 years working on another novel that I trunked. I had to have a bunch of false starts with other novels. I had to write at least 1 or 2 novellas, like 100 pages or so,
right,
to even get to the point where I was like, cool, I'm ready to do that. And even now I'm working on I guess what most would consider my second novel. And I'm still like, how did I finish a novel in the first place? Because I'm 30,000 words in, like, holy shit, how do I get to 60 to 70?
Well, and isn't that, like, I always hear that's the hardest part too, is like between 30 and 60.
Yeah, I had a therapist that I hated at the time for saying this, but they were like, isn't the middle most of the book? And I was like, yeah. But it's true. It's like everyone thinks you got to have a good ending and a good, beginning, but it's like, yeah, but a novel, the middle is most of it.
Right. The middle is, you have to engage.
And I was saying, like, I'm not good at middles. And she's like, isn't that most of a novel? And I'm like, don't even.
You do it then. Like, yeah, I was really excited when I first started, like, because I've never done, even my short pieces are very short. So I've like never really done, like Luminous Body was the longest thing I'd ever written at the time. And I'm just like, okay, it's like 9,000 words. So it's not a big piece. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna work on this novel. And at first I was like, oh man, I think I really can do this because the beginning comes so easy. You see all the characters and all the drama and the setup and the setting. And then, and then I got to like, I think 15,000 words and I started talking about it with people and freaked myself out and then shelved it, like put it away. So I'm getting back into it now because I think that it's worth at least finishing it to see, can I get through that middle part? Can I keep people engaged, or even myself, can I do that for, between 30 and 60,000 words?
I mean, it's really hard, man. Like I'm really jealous of people that are like, I've always wanted to do novels and I can do them fairly easily, because that is not my experience. I'm so much more of a short form, short story writer, novella, whatever. I call myself a novellaist at this point.
I like that.
Because, like, I like it too, because it's like, that's where I'm working. Like, I'm working on a new Alien, not the French, let me reword that. working on a new novella about aliens.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. And it's so weird because it's like, I know it's going to be 20,000 words, right? And that is fairly long, but like just knowing that it's only going to be 20,000 words, I can do that in 2 months.
Yeah,
Just because I know I can like start it and I can see the finish line as I'm writing it.
right.
But with a novel, you just really can't do that. So it's like I can crank out a 20,000 word thing, beginning, middle, and end in like less than 2 months. I've done it before. To get to 30,000 words, which is only 10,000 more words for this current novel in progress, took me a year and a half.
Right.
So it's so different. Time becomes so elastic, or just it's not a constant variant, because it's like you're right. Like you're thinking, okay, well, this has to be at a certain structure because I can't get to 30,000 and have it be the ending.
Right.
And it's just a lot. I found compartmentalizing, like this current one, I'm thinking it's like 3 stacked novellas with the same people and theme.
Yeah, a lot of, I've heard of authors talking about, I wrote one flash fiction piece at a time until I had a novel. And so I'm kind of trying to think of mine that way, but it's really not that simple once you get into it, because those pieces have to correlate with each other and you have to build on this sense.
No, it's true, man. Like even a serialized novella, which that was what Demon was, it had to connect. And I had to go back and do an extensive edit that like nearly killed me to turn it from a novella into a novel. And I had an editor I hired who told me this is a novella. And I was like, respectively, I don't believe you. Like, or that's your opinion. But like it was, to take it from. And even then, Demon is like 47 or 46,000 words, and that is right on the line with a longer novella.
Yeah.
But I consider it a novel because it is. It's like right at the start of what's considered a novel.
Yeah,
But it's a lot of it's just a lot of emotional baggage doing something that long.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. It's like being with those same characters over all that length of time, and I have a tendency to not. And I know this is like, I'm not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to work on one thing at a time. And that's what I do. Like I've never been able to manage like, writing 6 different pieces at a time, to be able to step away from one, which I think actually really hurts me in the long run, because it's harder to get like objectively look at what I'm working on.
No, I mean, that makes sense. Again, the grass is greener thing is like, I'm envious of people that can only work on one thing at a time, because I am the other way where I can work on 6 different things at a time. But the problem is when you can do that, suddenly nothing becomes the thing you have to work on, because everything can be the thing you can work on. So to actually do a novel is like, you sort of have to commit to it.
Right.
And it's hard because it's like, I can actually make money at short stories. Like, that's just what it is. Like I can make however much, $100 for the Bartlett thing. I can make money from a Vastarian sale.
Yeah.
Like that'll be like a decent amount of money. And then you got a novel where it's like, I don't have an agent, I don't have a press lined up, I don't have anything lined up for this.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. You gotta like have a lot of faith with a novel.
Absolutely, that's where I'm at.
And ultimately, I am trying to transition into being a novelist though, because like I don't know, there's a part of me that's like, I feel like I might be decent at this.
Well, do you feel like you write? I don't know. I feel it this way. Like I have so many short stories out, and I start feeling like we all sort of have our own little universe that we're building, whether or not any of our stories are connected to each other. Like a lot of mine, I just see them in the same sort of universe. And so I feel like, okay, it's time to write a novel and like really expand on that world that I'm creating. It feels like almost like I have to do it.
I mean, yes, like the weirdest part was, and I know how this sounds, I know it makes me sound like some cringy person that's just trying to make money at this, but like I started writing Demon like expecting it would be a single standalone book. And I got halfway through and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, like, oh fuck, this is a trilogy, this sucks, fuck, no. know. Cause like I am not, do you know what I mean? Like I have such trouble even finishing one novel. I'm like, oh God, why is this 3? Like, no.
No, that's so funny because that was exactly my feeling when I realized like the current novel. When I realized it was a novel, I was just like, oh no.
Like I know people that are super jazzed on this is going to be my 3-book series, and I'm like, I am, but so much of me is also like, no, like.
All the time you're gonna put all the nights you're gonna lay awake thinking about connecting storylines and new characters.
I mean, it's insane. I already have I've got 2 more books basically plotted and in my head. So that's, I mean, what's really nuts is like if I found myself, I can just verbal diarrhea because it's like someone will ask me like, what books are you thinking about doing? And it's like I have 5 different books just in my head, like. And I realized, like, not everyone is like that, but it's like, I'll have beat for beat. Like, I'll have the endings. I'll have, like, certain plot points.
Yeah, and they're loud, too, in there.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like I'm working on this Western one, and then the whole time I'm working on it, and then I have another plan that's a standalone after it. And that whole time I have the characters from the Fire's Rise series being like, what the fuck, dude? Like, this is supposed to be, like, a futuristic thing. So, like, if you give it too much time, it's not going to make sense. And I'm like, shut up. It's fine.
Yeah. And then there's this whole issue with like, we have COVID happening now, and part of the reason I'm struggling to even like open my manuscript is because I'm like, I don't want to work the pandemic into my manuscript. I just don't want to do it.
Okay, so this is hilarious. Maybe not hilarious. So Screaming Creatures, I shopped for 2 years. It was done in 2018, but it was probably written in 2017, right?
Right.
And the last story, the title story, is about a madness pandemic, essentially. But so it's my version of dealing with like, a virus pandemic or a zombie outbreak. It was like my version of doing that.
Right.
And I wrote this in 2017. And then in 2020, I finally decided I'm going to start my own press and I'm going to release it myself. And I'm going through this story and it's like talking about how people didn't know if they had jobs anymore. How everyone just sort of sat around in their pajamas all day. How the supermarkets would become super cluttered and like the main characters like bulk buying water and toilet paper. I swear to God, I wrote this all in 2017. So going through and editing it now, it was very spooky. It was like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah.
And it's different enough, but it was, I don't know, man. It was just very like, and I know no one's going to believe me that I wrote this in 2017, but I did.
That happens, though. That happens all the time with, I think, especially, like, science fiction writers, over the last 100 years, they'll write something that seems like, oh, that could never happen in the United States or in the world or with technology, and then 15, 20 years down the road, that's exactly what happened. And at the time it was written, people might have thought, well, that's unbelievable. And I think 3 years ago, in 2017, I probably would have thought that's so far-fetched, but here we are.
I know. It's fucking crazy. But anyway, and I feel like I apologize to everyone listening to this. I know I've self-inserted a lot. This is just sort of what I've been doing lately. I didn't mean to, like, bogart your interview because this is about you.
It's okay. We've been having fun.
Okay. But we're reaching about the hour mark, so I'm going to do a couple random ass questions for you, and then we're going to close it out. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the scary time when I have to come up with random questions on the spot. Do you have a favorite pair of shoes?
Oh, I do. And they're a pair of house shoes, and that's because I have weird feet. They're not shaped like regular people, so my house shoes are my favorite.
All right, good. Let me think here. Have there been any books you've read this year that you finished and thought, I wish I wrote that?
Yes. Come Closer by Sarah Graham absolutely knocked my socks off. And I know that book's been around for a while, but for anybody listening, page 17 scared me so bad at 2 a.m. I had to close the book and set it aside, and I finished it the next day. It's a short book, but it's so good. I don't want to say.
What is it called again?
Come Closer, and it's by Sarah Graham.
Okay. Huh, I'll have to look it up. Geez, it's hard to actually come up with random questions.
Yeah, we did not plan this ahead.
Okay, this is a really random one related to something I accidentally said earlier. If you could write a film in the Alien universe but make it your own, what would the plot be?
Oh my God, Sean. I don't know. Here's something. What was it? Alien 4, I think, is like my favorite. And is that I feel like that's the one everybody hates.
Oh, Alien Resurrection? I like that one.
Yeah, I love that one. So
I mean, I like it way better than the newer ones they've done.
I have not even seen the newer ones. I'm probably like the worst person to ask because I love that movie. I haven't watched the original, like the first, 1, 2, and 3. I haven't watched those since like probably the 90s.
Oh man, I mean, I'm a bastard, so I'll just admit that I used to work at a Blockbuster and it was going out of business. And so being a little 20-something shithead, we had these like collector's edition box sets, and I knew that they were just going to like throw them out or something. So I gaffed them, and I was burning DVDs at the time. So it's like I have Aliens 1 through 4 with these like little special boxes right on my shelf, and I stole them from a Blockbuster. I'm sorry.
Nice.
Dude, I mean, to be fair, I don't know what the hell I would say.
Nice.
Because like you're thinking like, oh well, it's on a planet. You're like, no, that's Alien 3. And you're like, well, it's on a, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched those in a long time. My parents were very lax as far as like monitoring our viewing. And I do remember the first movie. I was really little. I was probably 4 or 5 years old around the time that came out. And I don't think that they realized that it was on while I was, playing with my blocks or whatever. And that, I think it's it absolutely terrified me.
It's a terrifying film.
And so then I wouldn't watch them for a long time because I just remembered that horror. And so I didn't watch them again until I was like, I think 15 or 16 years old. And then, like number 4 was like my favorite.
I really liked 4. I know people shit on it and say it's the worst one, but I'm like, well, first off, 3 is the worst one, but
I also have like this deep dark secret that like Batman Forever is my favorite Batman movie.
Oh, well, that is sort of I'm kidding. I was going to say that's a travesty. I mean, dude, whatever. I was like 12 or something, and I went and saw it, and I enjoyed it for what it was.
Right, and that's the thing. I think I was like 14 or 15 when that came out, and I went to the theater with my friends.
I bought the soundtrack.
Yes.
Ba 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 ba. All the Seal shit.
Right, which was like the only video on MTV that whole entire summer.
Yeah, I remember a time when we had music videos on the TV.
Oh, yeah, we did. Good time.
Yeah. Well, I'm starting to sound like an old man, so I think I'm going to
okay.
shut this down before I try to expound on what I would do with an alien film, which I obviously can't just off the cuff.
I'm just going to watch them. I'm going to rewatch them again, and I'm going to, like, think about what I would do, and I'll, like...
You're going to send me a whole treatment, like, a month later. I'll be like, what the hell is this? You'd be like, scene 1, open on. I'm like, what?
Totally.
Thank you for agreeing to do this. I know you're very busy. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for agreeing to do the audio portion, even though for a little bit you thought this was just going to be text based.
Right.
Which I just think that was funny. So I brought it up. I don't even remember when I was like, yeah, so we're doing the Skype interview, and Michael was like, you're what? He was like, are you going to send her the questions? I was like, well, no, I usually don't write them ahead of time. What do you mean? And he was like, what? So there was a lot of confusion, but we straightened it out, and I somehow managed to get this done despite waking up 5 minutes before we started. So
yeah, was it?
Hell yeah.
It's been fun.
Do you have anything to plug? I guess plug your novelette.
Yeah, so Dim Shores is on Big Cartel, and they have the Shirley Jackson Award reprint of Luminous Body. So it's not the original is sold out, but the reprint is up and available. And I think they've also added an ebook version for that.
Nice. I do want to read it at some point. I feel like a total dick when I interview people and I haven't read anything. I mean, I've read some of your stories, so I felt slightly less dickish about it. But
Yeah.
No, it seems like pretty cool. Like it'd be up my alley, so I'm definitely gonna read it at some point.
Yeah, I'll just send you a copy.
Okay. See, that's my secret. I just do this so I can get free books.
Yeah.
That's not much of a secret. Everybody gets free books who does these. Anyway, let me do my plug, even though I've plugged myself through this whole fucking interview. Screaming Creatures, my first full-length collection, is out now from my press NICTITATING books. It's on Amazon. If you like it, please rate it on Goodreads or Amazon. I'm very pleased with how it's been doing. Just seems like people are still interested in it, which is nice after a month. And we have a lot more stuff coming out from NICTITATING. We just finished the Indiegogo a week ago. Finished strong with about 500 something bucks. That's going to help me quite a lot. And a lot of stuff's going to come out, so stay tuned. Thanks again for coming on, Brooklyn.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
No doubt. And stay tuned, everyone. I'm going to have a lot more authors on, so look out for that. Later, everyone.